Okay, we last week we dealt with ladles, and this week we're going to deal with spoons at some point. But there's some things before we get to the spoons. Um, that's let's just take things in order over here. So I don't know if we've formally done it before, but Nosen Tam Lifgam is an important concept over here, which is mentioned explicitly in the halacha. Now, I'm sure we've dealt with it at least outside before, but giving a negative taste. I'm pretty sure we have dealt with this before quite extensively. Anyway, the Shulchan Aruch in Tzadi Gimel states a pot that was used for meat should not be used for cooking milk. Okay, that you knew. If milk was cooked in it within 24 hours, then the food is aser if the meat can be tasted, and of course you've got to measure against the entire pot. Now, in general, I'll just take a little side note over here. In general, if you are measuring against the walls of the entire pot, as I said, the fact that we measure against the walls of the entire pot is an approximation, is a strict approximation, because we hold that when you cook food inside a pot, taste is absorbed to some extent inside the pot. Okay, now this is not just magic. This is something that is actually that is acknowledged by the master chefs of the world, who insist on using a seasoned pot when they're cooking their cordon bleu cooking. They like using a seasoned pot that's been used before, and it has a taste nicely baked into it, which they believe enhances the taste. That fact, by the way, itself, I always get a little uncomfortable with, because it kind of undermines the whole thing that we're talking about of Tam Lifgam, that after 24 hours it imparts a negative taste. Because if it's true what the gourmet chefs say, then we're actually then this whole thing of Tam Lifgam is no longer a heter for us. But nonetheless, the halacha doesn't follow the chefs; it follows the Shulchan Aruch. Anyways, so back to the pot itself. We know that taste is absorbed to some extent into the pot. To what extent? Don't know. Honestly, we just don't know. But what we do know is that there's a certain maximum that could possibly be absorbed into the pot. That maximum is if you have a new pot that's been used for the first time with, say, meat, the maximum amount of taste it could possibly absorb is equal to the volume of the meat that you cooked in it. It can't have more. It can't have produced new meat from where there was no meat. So you'd say that if it's the first time that you've used the meat, the maximum amount of taste that could be in that pot is what came from the original piece of meat. If you've used this pot a number of times, though, you've cooked soup in it, you've cooked meat in it, it's been used a few times. Now we can't say the maximum is from the meat that was originally cooked in it, because you've had a very large amount that's gone in, and perhaps it's all just compounding inside there. So now you've got to say that the maximum possible is the volume of the pot, as if the walls of the pot were saturated with the meat taste. Now, in reality, of course, that's never going to be the case, but we just don't know. We don't know how much meat was absorbed, and therefore we take the stringent view that the entire pot is just, you're basically cooking your food inside a great big piece of meat. Okay, although the fact is that it's called blios, it's called things that are absorbed, which is more lenient than if it was actual meat that you're cooking in, because it's a once removed taste. It's a no same time, not as opposed to the actual original. Okay. Now we did the math on the pot, and to find out, assuming that you have this pot that is considered as if there's meat absorbed inside the entire pot, what has to be true in order for the walls of the pot to be less than 1/60th of the contents of the pot? And it turns out that the walls and the floor of the pot have to be exceedingly thin, so thin that it probably wouldn't hold the contents of the pot. So basically, in reality, there's no such thing as a pot whose contents outweigh have more volume than the walls by a factor of 60. Okay, so you can always count on the fact that whatever taste is coming out of the walls of the pot will not be batel unless it's like a new pot that's only been used once and you know exactly how much meat was cooked in it before. Okay. So that's the fact of the pot. So when the Shulchan Aruch says you need to measure against the entire pot, it basically you don't bother. You're not going to make it. Okay. However, if 24 hours have passed between when it was last used for meat and when it is used for milk, so somebody comes and accidentally uses the fleshik pot for milk, and the 24 hours, then the blios in the pot is called nosem tan lifgam. It's considered a negative taste, and because it's a negative taste, then the tafshil is mutar. So whatever is inside the pot comes out to be mutar. However, you have a problem with your pot because now you've got meat cooked into the pot and you've got milk cooked into the pot. Okay, the Ramah now comes out with something that'll make your head pop. It says, but it can be used for other food. In other words, parava. You can't use it for meat because it's just had milk in it. You can't use it for milk because it's a fleshik pot. But what about just cooking potatoes? Well, why not? Why couldn't you cook potatoes in it? Because it's ultimately it's not you've got it was used for meat and it was used for milk, which it shouldn't have done, but okay, so maybe you can just use it. And it's not actual basa b'challah, because remember this pot had a time lifgam in the walls. It was more than 24 hours. So the meat and milk that are absorbed inside the walls of the pot do not become actual basa b'challah because it's a negative taste. Okay. So the Ramah comes in and says okay, but you can use it for other food, parava. All right. We lost Donna for a second. However, okay, the dinim of a pot cover, interestingly, are the same as the pot itself, but there are some who are machmir and said the cover has the din of a ben yomo, even if it's an eina ben yomo. Okay, remember ben yomo it was used in the last 24 hours, and eina ben yomo is not used in the last 24 hours.
So those potatoes that you cooked in there, let's say potatoes cooked in the pot, it's parv. It's neither milkik or fleshik. It's parv.
Well, depends. I'll say that depends on whether you did it within 24 hours of using the milk.
Right. Okay.
Right. It'll always be parva, but the dinim will be different as to whether you're allowed to eat it with meat or not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, because if it's I don't remember if we've done this before, but basically if you cook parva food in a milchik pot, it makes a difference whether the pot was ben yom or not. Because if the pot was not ben yomo, then the potatoes are 100% parava. You can even cook them knowing that you're going to eat them with fleishiks, as long as the pot was not ben yomo, because it's not absorbing any valid milchik taste, and you would then be allowed to cook those potatoes knowing that you're going to use them with meat. If however it is a ben yomo, right? You used it earlier in the day for milchiks, and now you've washed it and it's all clean. You cannot cook potatoes in that pot now, knowing that you're going to eat them with fleishiks.
It's like the cookies that we were talking about last week.
So now this is now a machlokes between the Ashkenazim and the Sfardim. It's not the same as the cookies because the cookies are in a dry inside a dry oven, and there's no liquid to affect the transfer. Yeah, you're cooking the potatoes in water. There's taste transfer going on from the walls of the pot into the pot. So
Right.
if you go ahead and cook potatoes just intending to make a parva potato salad, and then you say, you know what, I want to have these potatoes. I want to put these potatoes into my meat stew as well. So now this is a machlokes between the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim. The Sfaradim say, okay, you didn't deliberately make the potatoes to use with meat, but now that they've been cooked and you want to use them with meat, okay, that's fine. The Ashkenazim are machmir on this and say you can't do that. However, if you already went ahead and somebody went ahead and took the potatoes and mixed them up into a meat stew or whatever, and then somebody else comes and says, "Hey, these potatoes were cooked in milchiks." You say, "Whoops, it's fine." They were cooked in milchiks. They're still actually parva, and the taste of the milk inside them is considered batel.
It's interesting because my wife was going to make um, do that somewhat. Then she would probably make it in a parv pot because she might want to use it for something with a milk meal, something with a fleshik meal. So she would just make it in a parv pot, probably. I would think.
Okay.
What about
Um,
what about fish? You now have a pot that you use for milking, then you waited, and went out to, it was fleshik, and they waited and all that stuff. Now you want to make a filter fish, which see some people they put in a pot.
Mabaya. Well, I mean, how's that different from any other parva?
Um, Only because fish and meat. That was I was thinking about.
Right, because the fish and meat we don't tam of basar. I don't know if we're machmir about time of basar. And I mean, you're allowed to cook you're allowed to cook fish in a fleshly pot that's clean. It's not a That's not a shaila, I don't think.
Right.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to jump just because it's an interesting point over here. Like, why is there a chumrah that they said that the cover of the pot has the din of a ben yomo, even if it's eno ben yomo? Which is an interesting chumrah, and the Rama says it's a chumrah without a good reason. It's just interesting. You don't often see the Rama saying something like that. And one of the explanations that's given for that of why the pot cover is it could have a chumrah like this is explained by the Marshal. He says that this chumrah is talking about covers that are narrow on top. Right, so like the inside of the lid tapers upwards, and there's a little crevice inside there that's difficult to clean, which means that chances are it's got some remnant of actual food inside it. Once you've got remnants of actual food inside it, we treat it as a ben yomo because all the time when you've got actual food never becomes like tamlif gum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can't say, oh well, it's more than 24 hours since this was cooked and it doesn't give a taste. No, it's as long as it's real food and it hasn't actually spoiled, then it's considered tam nishvach, and therefore the chumrah there would be for a lid that's shaped like this to treat the lid as a ben yomo always. Okay, that's just a little digression over there. In any case, if there's a reason to be matir if the food is needed for Shabbos, there's a loss involved, you should be matir if the cover is eno ben yomo, the same way as we offer a kadera. Okay, so in other words, this chumrah of the for the lid is one that you only have to do if there's no great loss involved. Okay.
Well, Donna's back.
Welcome back.
Thank you. My internet is terrible.
You're having a sad internet day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll skip this point over here. Now here's an interesting question: is if you have a pot that's fleshik, and you want to kosher it, let's say for Pesach, you could you take it to the Hagala station and you dip the thing in boiling water and all of the taste comes out, and now you say this pot is now clean, parava, ready to be used for Pesach, or ready to be used for Molchix even. And we have a minhag not to kasher from Molchix to from Fleshix to Molchix during the year, because we don't want to create a dynamic where people don't bother getting two different sets of pots, because they'll say, okay, I'll use it for meat today and I'll kasher it, and I'll use it for milk tomorrow and kasher it back and then use it for meat again. It's just not what we want. So Chazal said don't kasher from you can't kasher from fleshix to molchix. You can kasher from molchix to fleshix, not from fleshix to molchix, except on Pesach, because there, if you allow it once a year for Pesach, no, nobody's going to be save up all of their molchix cooking until Pesach. You're not going to create that dynamic. Okay, so we know that you can kasher a pot with water. What about kashering a pot with milk? So this is an interesting question which arises in the poskim. What happens if you have a pot theoretically where you know that that there's a tam lifgam in the walls of the pot, and really in order to kasher the pot, first of all, let's understand what is the mechanism of the kashering. When you're doing kashering by Hagala, first of all, it has to be on an Eino Ben Yomo. Okay, that's an important thing. That when you, especially you should know this when you're about to kasher your stuff for Pesach. The pot has to have not been used for 24 hours. Why? What's the mechanism? The standard way of Hagala is to kasher the pot in its own water. Now, as I just told you earlier in the day, you're never going to have 60 times the contents of the pot in the water that's inside the pot, even if you fill it up to the brim. Okay, that's not going to happen. But it doesn't have to be, because the water isn't doing bittul on the taste that comes out. All it's doing is removing it. And it doesn't have to do bittul, because remember, it's a tam lifgam that's coming out. That's the important thing, is that it's a tam lifgam coming out of the walls of the pot. Okay, so now, excuse me a second. So seeing as it's a tam lifgam coming out of the walls of the pot, all you need to do is make sure that your pot is full of boiling water, and then just to make sure, you take like a hot rock or something and stick it into the, or take boiling water from your kettle and pour it in, just so that it overflows and does the rims as well. Okay, and then then you say it's extracted all of the taste of the meat that was inside the walls of the pot. Okay, or chametz, or whatever it is that you're kashering it from. Okay, now what happens if it happens accidentally? It doesn't matter. Hagala is not something that you need kavanah for. It's not like a mitzvah that you need to have intention in order to fulfill it. So like when you say Kriyas Shema, right? If you want to say Kriyas Shema, you have to have intention for the mitzvah, because if you're just stam saying the words, you're not going to be yotzei. But if it's the right time of day and it's during the davening and whatever, then obviously you're doing the mitzvah. But when it comes to Hagala of a pot, it's simply a practical thing that happens. The water has come in and has kashered the pot. For this reason, you could give your pot to a non-Jew to kasher, and that would work. Okay. Whereas shchita, as we learned in Mishnah, if a non-Jew shechts an animal, it's an avela. It doesn't matter. He can follow the halachas 100%. But it's still an avela, because there's a mitzvah involved here. The non-Jew is not in the category of people who can slaughter a cow kosher. Okay. Similarly, taking truma, that's what we learned it this morning. Okay. Taking truma is a religious obligation that has to be done by a Jew. Okay. You can instruct your non-Jewish friend as much as you like. He cannot separate truma for you. It won't work. Now, that's not the case when it comes to kashering a pot, because that's just a mechanical action. Okay, you could give a pot to a non-Jew and he can kasher it for you, no problem. All that he's doing is a mechanical action of extracting the taste from the walls of the pot. So now, let's say somebody accidentally cooked a pot full of milk. in an Eino ben Yoma. This is exactly the case that we're talking about in our halacha over here. What happens if you've got an Eino ben Yoma, a fleishik's pot, and somebody accidentally filled it up with milk and brought it to boil, and then they say, "Uh-oh, this was the fleishik's pot," and they say, "But hold on a second, we just kashered the pot. Now we can call this a milchik's pot. So why can't we cook milchiks in it from now on? Because it was Eino ben Yomo. We extracted the taste of the fleishiks using the milk. Okay, and now it's got milchiks baked into the side of the pot. So why don't we just call this a milchik pot from here on in?" And there's actually machlokas about this. If this does work, there are those who hold it does work. So it's the Baal Itzer says that the pot is now milchiks if he says it really is milchiks if the kashering worked, if there's 60 against the pot, and however the halacha that we follow is according to Rabbeinu Peretz, even if the kli was used for milk when it was Eino ben Yoma, you can't use it for meat or for milk. The reason it can't be used for meat is obvious because it's now milk blias in the kli. And why can't it be used for milk, even though Meikar Adin Minatzara it should be allowed to use for milk because it is an Eino ben Yoma kli, but it's to prevent us from making the mistake of using a ben Yoma meat kli with milk. Okay. So that's so the halacha we're not gonna follow that and say that okay this pot has now become milchik. We're gonna say kasher it just because it looks like the right thing. So it seems like we're actually broadly acknowledging that the mechanism works, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to rely on that because it just doesn't look good.
When you were saying before that a Gentile can't toivel or can't not toivel can't do shkita or anything. Truma because there's a bracha associated with all of this.
The bracha is a din d'Rabbanan. It doesn't. It's not essential. If somebody does one of these mitzvahs without saying a bracha, it still works.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if they were related.
It's not because the bracha is a siman that there's something going on over here.
Right. Okay.
There's no bracha to be said on Hagalas Kalim.
Right.
It's just a mechanical act.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. But
okay. Now there's an interesting parallel that we have in this, which comes from Kodshim. If you cast your mind back to our Mishnayos in Kodshim, Donna, I'm not sure how familiar you are with this with the concept, but in the temple, there's a time limit for the korbanot that are eaten. Okay, some of them are eaten by Kohanim. Yes, that's right. So some of them are burned entirely on the Mizbeach, some of them are eaten by the Kohanim, some of them can be eaten by anybody. Okay, but in all cases, there's a time limit. So when it comes to shlamim, you've got 2 days in the intervening night, okay, during which time it has to be eaten. Other korbanot have to be eaten in a shorter time. But one thing that is common between them is once the time has expired, the korban becomes what's called notar, which means it's leftovers, and it is very highly prohibited to the point to the extent of being aser kares. It's like same as it's like the same penalty as eating on Yom Kippur. So it's a very severe iser, nosar, and here's the issue, is that temple food has to be cooked and eaten, and you take the meat and you cook it in a pot, and then you serve it out in plates. Okay, that pot has absorbed the taste of kodshim. So let's say you've got shlamim that are which has got a 2 day limit. So you bring the korban on Sunday, and you're now allowed to eat this meat Sunday and Monday, and you're cooking the food, and it's got the taste. And what you've done is you've left a taste of kodshim inside the pot. Now, after that pot, after the blios, the taste that's absorbed inside that pot has become nosar, which it will do as soon as the time limit expires. Then that pot is going to contain isra, and you have to rekasher it. Okay. So you actually have to kasher the pot after you've used it for kodshim, because it's going to have that isra in it. Now, what happens when you've got a chol hamoed, right? When people are all coming to Yerushalayim, and every day they're having a party and shechting more, because that was what Chazal wanted people to do. They wanted them to come and celebrate and eat and drink and be merry and have a good old time in the mikdash. So now they've got this pot that they're cooking today's shlamim in. And then tomorrow, they bring another korban for the family, and they cook more shlamim in that. And then the following day, they want to keep doing this every day. And there's an amazing thing. Do you remember this from the Mishnah, Eliezer? That every day's cooking acts as a kashering of the previous day.
Right. Okay.
That's interesting.
Right. So let's say first day cholam, let's say Yom Tov is on Shabbos, and then first day Chol Hamoed is on Sunday. So now they bring the shlamim, they cook it in the pot. On Monday it's still okay because it's got a 2-day limit. So they bring more shlamim, and they cook it in that same pot, and that cashes out the pot from the previous day and puts Monday's blios into the walls of the pot. Okay, and so on. As long as the pot is constantly in use, every day kashes the previous day, and that we do permit. Now, perhaps we're more makil with that because it's because in the mikdash it can be counterintuitive, but we're actually a lot more lenient on a lot of dinim inside the mikdash, because people are already, on a level of okay, we're in the mikdash. We're eating kodshim. We're being very careful about these things. So we actually waive a lot of dinim derabanan when it comes to the base of mikdash, because people are inherently careful about things in the mikdash. Okay, so that was just that's a nice little interesting side note about the kalim in the Beis Hamikdash. If however, I should just point out that they did sometimes use earthenware pots, and those earthenware pots, there's no such thing as kashering. So what do you have to do with earthenware pots that you used for kodshim? You smash them. Once you're done with them, you smash them. Okay. And if you recall, when it comes to a korban chatas, there's actually a ritual obligation to smash them in the azara, and if they're metal pots, then you kasher them in the azara, because there's actually a ritual obligation specifically with the korban chatas. Just for your to jog your memory, there. We'll probably come back to that soon in Mishnah. Anyways. Okay, I'm going to skip this part here. And so, wait, the Rashba says. So Rashba says that even though normally libun is required, since this is a terrible, it's enough that the blios are weakened through cooking in order that they not become nosar. So normally you would have to kasher, your pots very well, in the Beis Hamikdash. We're talking here in the case of the Beis Hamikdash. It's enough that what's absorbed in the pot is weakened through cooking, so that they don't become nosar. So if vegetables were cooked after the meat in the pot, then so now coming into our case over here, he says that if vegetables were cooked after the meat, then the pot can be used for milk. He says. Like big exclamation mark over here. This is, the Rashba is not a small guy. He's a Rishon, and he's got big shoulders. So by cooking the vegetables, the taste of the meat is weakened and doesn't become asur when milk is cooked in the pot. he just makes the distinction here that but if the pot was actually used for isser, like non-kosher food, then it needs to have proper haggadah done, because even though cooking something parve in between, or even boiling water or something, changes it to a weaker taste, the din is that even a weak taste of isser is aser. So we don't paskin like the Rashba. We see that the Tosfos and the Rosh don't hold like this. They explain that every day's cooking is a hagala, that heter that we have in kodshim only applies to kodshim, because every day's cooking was meat. It has the din of min b'mino, which is a little more makil. So because it's the taste of meat being absorbed into meat, we can be a lot more lenient on what gets cooked inside that pot. But as a general principle, we are not going to allow this when it comes to the to our case with the meat pot that vegetables cooked in it, and then you want to put milk in it. We don't hold like that. Anything else here? Skip. And I told you already about the cover of the pot, which is mentioned over here. And I'm gonna so now comes spoons. Sorry, this isn't about spoons, beg your pardon. Spoons is the next chapter. See if there's anything else I want to bring out in tonight. Sure. Okay. Okay, you know what? We're gonna leave it at this for tonight, and we'll start clean next week with spoons.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions before we close off?
No, I'm not. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
Good night. Bye, Donna.
Good night, everyone.
Bye,
Good night, everyone. Bye.